We're all here except one. We'll proceed. Let's start on page 129. A staff report dealing with Norfolk County Heritage Designation Report for the McCall-Kinney property. Who has this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Our first report this evening deals with a new heritage designation, the McCall-Kinney property, which is down in Ward 1, Councillor Heights area, and St. Williams, 176 Town Line Street. The report is consistent. It's just a two-page report that introduces the rather informative designation report that's been attached on page 131. That's been prepared by the Norfolk Heritage Committee, Mary Cahill. It's quite interesting if you've had a chance to look through that. This basically, with Council's endorsement, we can initiate the process through the Clerk's Department to add this to one of our 100-plus heritage designated properties in Norfolk County. The current owners have approached the county seeking this designation, and staff and the Heritage Committee are most receptive. We're recommending approval, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an excellent report. I love the pictures and all the talk and everything about all the designs and how St. Williams was booming at one point. That was we may have to hire a planner or something from way back then, get us back in that spot. But sounds like a good deal. I'm glad the owners were agreeable to it, and I'll move the recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Seconder. Councillor Geisens, any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. All right, let's go on to page 147. A staff report dealing with terms of reference amendments to the Tourism and Economic Development Advisory Board.
Thanks again, Mr. Chairman. This is a bit of housekeeping again. You'll recall in late 2017, December, Matt Vaughn and our planning department brought forward the recommendations about the creation of a PAC, a Public Advisory Committee that's required under the Planning Act. And Council had decided that they would like TDAB to act in that capacity so that they would be dealing with major policy and major development applications to satisfy the requirements under the Planning Act. So what we have done is amended the existing Tourism and Economic Development Advisory Board terms of reference, which is attached starting on page 150. It's a track change document that makes the adjustments to have TDAB act as the PAC, and also we've taken the opportunity to do some other minor housekeeping, changing departments and divisions because of the new nomenclature that has recently been approved. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Mayor Luke.
Mr. Chair, we certainly did a considerable debate and discussion on this earlier this year. So that's what's brought us to this recommendation. Not that we can't do further debate tonight, but I'd be pleased to move this. It's a one-year trial basis, and it's something that we have to have in place, period.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Black.
I'll second that. And if I could just ask a question about
Absolutely.
it. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Chris. So I assume that TDAB is looking forward to assuming this new role.
Through the chair, that's correct. I mean, they are a volunteer group, so we want to be very cautious so we don't load them up with too much work. But I think they were genuinely interested in providing council with comments related to the planning applications of that size and scale. So I think we're fine, good to go.
Okay, that's good.
Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It says on page 148 at the top there, only in policy review, only as per council's direction. So, Mr. Baird, how often do you think something would be sent to them to review? And what would the scope of the project have to be to send it to them?
Through the chair, the intent is really not to get down into the weeds and deal with, just your typical zoning bylaw amendments that might come forward. This would be major policy works like the official plan, major developments, and council might find themselves grappling with an issue like later this evening, the whole cannabis discussion, that you may want to go to TDAB and seek their input. The same way you could do that through TDAB anyway, or the Ag Advisory Board. But again, it ties back to the new Planning Act amendments, and it keeps Norfolk County in line with the legislation.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Brunton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just quickly, Chris, I read that 12-month trial period. Was that at our request or at the committee's request? I can't remember who initiated that.
Through the chair, I believe it was council,
Okay.
because you want to see if it works, and we're certainly supportive, and the committee as well.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, Mayor Luke has moved the recommendation in the report. Councillor Black has seconded it. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. All right, let's go to 161. Health and Social Services regarding a award of contract for licensed home child care. Ms. Miranda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This report is to award the contract to Today's Family Early Learning and Care for the services of a licensed home care child program. This particular program provides daily early learning and care provided to children in an approved private residence from infancy to 13 years of age, which is then monitored by the third-party agency, which in this case, if awarded, would be Today's Family. It's important to note for Council that Today's Family was the only applicant for this particular RFP, and they did meet the benchmark score of a minimum of 70%. Staff are confident with proceeding with Today's Family, and it does provide good value for the total cost, that it is a reduction from the previous, from the current provider that is providing the service today. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Black?
Chairman, I'd like to move the recommendation in the report.
Okay. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Oliver? Any other discussion? Councillor Oliver, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. A quick question, Marlene. I thought I was familiar with all of the home care and child care agencies. Where is this contractor located? Are they a Norfolk County business or outside of our county but providing that service inside?
Through the chair, they actually are from Hamilton, and they actually provide services already in Norfolk. They provide for the daycare that was recently opened in Port Dover.
Okay.
So they're our current providers, but they are out of Hamilton.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? It has been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. Going on to the next Health and Social Services report, Income Security Reform Working Group Report on page 165.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This report is regarding the release of the Ministry of Community and Social Services report on Income Security Reform Working Group, which actually contains 98 recommendations, and the ministry was seeking feedback, but did provide only a 60-day consultative period. This particular report is really to achieve the overall goals of all of these initiatives, is to improve the income security for Ontarians. Given the tight timelines and the inability to bring it forward to advisory and to committee, staff received and reviewed the recommendations and generally support the recommendations. The 5 themes within the report are within the report before you, and we are asking for council endorsement, and we will provide that endorsement to the ministry if so approved by council. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Mover and seconder? Councillor Black moving? Okay, seconder, Councillor Columbus. All those in favor? Thank you. All right. Community Services. ZOLL, is that a word or are we using 4 letters here? What does that mean? ZOLL Cardiac Monitor Acquisition.
I think it's both, but it's pronounced Zoll. We'll use it
Zoll?
as a
Okay.
word. Okay.
We'll call it Zoll. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I first do apologize. My A team here, Sarah Townsend, is delayed in training tonight, so you've got the B team to present this report, which is myself. Zoll Cardiac Monitor Acquisition report number CS 1802 is asking council to amend the purchasing policy. Our reason behind this is in the past, all Norfolk County paramedic units, truck units have used the Sol X series monitor and defibrillation units. The first of these units were bought in 2013, 4 units. The manufacturer's recommendation is every 5 years these units have to be changed, so hence the 4 units bought in 2013 now need to be exchanged out in 2018. The standardization is recommended from staff to limit cost and limit liability. If we were to now switch to a new series of monitoring devices, we would have to you don't just change a monitor, you have to change a lot of other things as far as the cuff and the other stuff that are mentioned in the truck, so the cost would be higher, and also the training with that. So basically with that, working with the corporate services people in 2021, when the series of these monitors are up for replacement, then we're recommending go out for a market analysis, see what's out there. This technology does change. Right now, Zoll staff are recommending as the product to go with. In 2021, the changing technology, we're not sure what'll be out there. And with that, I will turn it over to County Council for any questions.
Councillor Black.
Chairman, through you to Bill. Just wondering, I know these are expensive and really haven't seen the replacements coming through before, or at least I don't recall. Do we get any money back from the old ones? You know, is there a trade-in value? Can they be refurbished? Or?
Through the chair, I don't believe so in this point with these being life-saving devices and the importance of them. When the manufacturer says 5 years is when you should cycle those out, 5 years is when you should cycle those out. I imagine there's some recycling of internal components, but I'm not sure of that. Perhaps Marlene has something on that?
Through the chair, at times with medical devices, they are sent off to third world countries or they can be recycled, but typically when the lifespan of something is recommended by a vendor, we need to adhere to that. In the event that something negatively impacted a patient, we would be liable, so the lifespan is what the lifespan is, unfortunately.
Okay. Councillor Wells, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I will be moving the recommendation contained within the report, and the reason for my approval, or my recommending that we suggest that we approve this, is indicated in the current approved budget for 2018 that there will be sufficient funds and no exemption will necessarily result in extra costs. And if there's no extra costs, I'm always in favor.
Okay. Can we have a seconder? Mayor Luke. All right, speakers list. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I do have a question that I'll direct to Mr. Quidlin, and I acknowledge, Bill, you may not be able to answer this, but I was struck by the fact that on page 173 are the details here, but there is more than one vendor of this type of equipment, I gather, and yet they are prohibited by the province from supplying said equipment, to reference paragraph 3, in Ontario. And do we have any explanation of why the province has chosen to, if you like, to contravene their own discriminatory business practices legislation, where they insist on us purchasing from all kinds of bidders, etc., and yet they've dictated that there be one source and one source only for this?
Through the chairs, in discussions with Chief Townsend prior to tonight, I believe it's a quality insurance issue where you're dealing with the one supplier and there's no middleman in between. You're dealing with the product from them. And I think that's what the Ministry of Health requires for quality insurance on the product.
It is a so in fact, it's not an apple and apple comparison. I guess you're saying that the products are apple and orange comparison, and they've chosen, i.e., the Apple single source.
I believe it should be an apple to apple, but the recommendation, or help me here with the Ministry of Health, we have no choice. We have to go with the distributor.
Mayor Luke, I'd like to point out that you have a new secret admirer. She's looking right at you. If you would turn around and have a look. Okay. I couldn't resist that. All right. All right, where were we? Councillor Columbus, you're up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will support the recommendation on the floor. Simply for this one sentence here, a change in brands would negatively impact emergency response with our paramedic colleagues at the scene. I think that's enough to go with the recommendation. Just a question to Bill. Do we know how many times a defibrillator has been used? Like perhaps there's some of these, I know to use it just on one life and save a person is important, but do we keep a record of that, how many times it was used?
Through the chair, yes, those records would exist, but I believe with this product, it's a monitor and defibrillator, so it's my understanding that they could be monitoring a patient without using the defibrillators.
Okay. Mayor Luke, are you still able to speak?
Yeah, just... Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Cridlin, we have 16 total ambulances.
Through the chair, I believe it's 17 or 18 with spares. I'm not sure of that number.
Okay, we'd have some spares. And I guess my question is, these are on a 4-year cycle?
5-year.
5-year?
Yeah.
So when you're into this type of cardiac monitor, Mr. Chair, I guess because you're replacing 4 every year, you're pretty well locked in there. Otherwise, if you don't continue, you got to change all of them over. You got a significant investment that, yeah.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Yeah.
If the recommendation tonight was to go to an RFP for a new product, yeah, we would be changing all 18 plus all the supplementary equipment with it. That's the additional cost, unfortunately.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Brunton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Am I correct? Are these the same apparatus that are in the arenas in different places? Is that what we're talking about? Are they the same product? Or are they different?
Through the chair, no, they're different. I think what you're thinking of are the defibrillators. If somebody needs to administer a shock, they're there.
Yeah.
These actually are a monitor as well, which give you the conditions, the defibrillator, and they do a number of things. They're a life-saving device.
So the ones in the facilities, though, and I know a lot of people, I don't know about Norfolk, but I know the defibrillators have been donated, or different groups purchase them and put them in the facilities. Are they adequate, or are they, like, who is the supplier of those units?
Through the chair, I may ask Marlene Miranda to jump in here. She has a little more information on this thing than myself.
Yeah. Through the chair, those we just source them out like we would any other product. So we source them out, and they really are not equivalent to what's in front of you this evening. They are a stopgap for anybody to utilize just to defibrillate someone until paramedics are able to respond. So it just saves some time. Every second in these type of emergencies are critical. So that's what those particular defibrillators in each of the respective county properties are. And they're about $3,000 a piece, and they're just very simple to use, easy to administer, where then the paramedics, our experts, come in and then actually provide the life-saving measures as they transport patients to hospital.
I guess my question is, like, the ones that we have are in our facilities, are they donated, or are they ones that we've purchased?
Through the chair, I'm not aware of any that have been donated. They possibly could have been. I am aware that we have purchased some because they have come before council for approval, but I can't speak to the specific numbers. I know at GAV specifically, we have purchased them, and I know that Chief Townsend has been very active in assisting in getting those in the respective county buildings. And I think Councillor Oliver can comment likely on the donation part of it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, a couple of us were just speculating or recalling. I remember quite clearly when, and I think it was done through the fire department, but there were service clubs that donated the initial public access defibrillators for our facilities, and then I think we gradually incorporated the replacement cycling of those into our operating budget. So all of the initial ones, I think, were donated to the county for our libraries and our arenas, et cetera.
So donated the actual equipment or the funds to purchase? Funds for, okay. I guess you say, and my question of me to Bill Cridlin is, Bill, there is another supplier, or there are other suppliers, but the province only dictate this one as far as our EMS. Am I correct? Is that what you said?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay, it's interesting, if there are other suppliers, who do they get to sell to? You know, like...
Through the chair, likely through other provinces or through the United States. So the Ministry of Health is responsible for Ontario, as you're well aware. So that would be where the restriction would lie.
So the kickback goes to our Ministry of Health? Is that how it works? Or it's odd that some of these things are only dictated that we can only use a certain product. I find that frustrating when there are other companies that make these things. Thank you.
Councillor Height, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Cridlin. I see we bought these over a period of 3 years, and now you're proposing to do it over 4 years. So how many are you going to allow to be in existence that are end of life, considering the second year we bought 8 of these? So mathematically, it doesn't work out properly that you're going to replace these on a 4-year period because you bought 8 of them the second year the first time.
Through the chair, I believe they're being cycled at, the 17 will be replaced over 5 years, if I answered your question.
It does, but the first year that you bought these in 2013 was 4 purchased. The next time it was 8. So if we're buying 4 this time, does that mean next year where you're going to be buying 8 and you'll be looking for $200,000? Because the math doesn't work out over the years where you buy these to replace them evenly.
Through the chair, no, I think you're correct, Councillor Height. I'm not, obviously the 2019 capital budget hasn't been put together yet, but if they were purchased 5 years from 2019 and 2014, yes, we would have to have that many number to replace on the cycle. You are correct.
So then mathematically you only have 3 years to replace all of these because that's how you bought them. You bought all 17 within 3 years.
That is true, but I believe, if I'm just doing my math here, if the 5 that were bought in 2016 would not need to be replaced until 2020-21. Am I doing my math correctly?
Till 21, yeah.
So what council will see is in the capital budgets, as these cycle through, you will see them in the year of the capital budget. I'm hoping not confusing things here, but they have a 5-year lifespan, and that's when they need to be replaced.
Yeah, my problem is with the 8 really, because that means the following year we have to buy 8 of these for $200,000. It's double. We should have spaced those out in the first place, I would have guessed. But thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Councillor Wells has moved. The mayor has seconded. All those in favor of the report? Thank you. All right, let's go on to page 175 of our agenda. A report dealing with the award for a tender for HVAC replacement at the county administration building. Who's got this one?
Through the chairman to council, before you this evening is the award report for the tender for the HVAC replacement here at the county administration building. We complied with the purchasing policy. We have received the required number of bids, and we are approximately $100,000 under budget, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Black.
I'm more than happy to move the recommendation where we're saving $100,000. Much appreciated.
Okay.
And I have a question if we get a seconder.
Go ahead. Seconder, please. Councillor Oliver.
Just a question, Mr. Chairman, to staff. Just would there be any disruption to service, and when's the start and finish?
Through the chairman to council, we will do everything that we can to minimize the disruption to staff. Obviously, until it's awarded, we don't actually have a confirmed start date because it'll depend on the contractor's schedule, et cetera. But there's terms within when they can do the work.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brunton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, I guess my question is, who did the estimate for this? It's 168,000 under the estimate, and that's quite large. Did we estimate this thing wrong, or who did the estimate, Lee?
Through the chairman to council, staff would have done the estimate in conjunction with the prices that we are currently seeing, as well as the building assessment engineer would have provided us stuff. It's important to note that that the award of this contract isn't the full value of everything that we're going to be spending in the account. There's other additional fees that are part of the project that aren't included in the award of the tender. Which is why I had indicated that we were approximately going to be about 100,000 underneath the estimate, as opposed to the 160, because we have additional works that need to be undertaken that are just not part of this contract.
And what are they?
Some of the building assessment and all of those sorts of things, they were done as part of this project as well.
So that money's already been spent?
I don't believe that it's been paid, but the work has been completed, yes.
Okay, my next question, if I may, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Johnson. The original 490,000, how was that financed?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Brunton. This is financed from the General Capital Replacement Reserve, which, if you recall from our reserve report that we did back in July, this was one of the reserves that we were not actually contributing to, and we have changed that now we are contributing to this reserve. So at the end of a 10-year, at the end of a 10-year forecast, we'll be in a plus situation. So we are, right now, there's a significant deficit in this reserve, but we do have a plan in place to bring it into the black. And just to note, even though we are under budget in this, it's a caution using the word savings, because it's not really savings if we don't have the money to spend in the first place.
So there is no reserve?
There is a reserve for it, but the reserve is in a negative balance today.
Well, that's my point. There is no reserve. There's no money in the reserve. My question, though, is, so it's totally funded from that reserve?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, it is.
So where's the money coming from? The taxpayer, some sort or another, I guess? Is it, I mean, there's no money in the reserve, so where does the money come from to pay the bill?
So yes, the reserve is in a negative balance. However, our cash is not. We do have cash to pay for it. However, if everything were to be paid for today in the next month, we wouldn't have the money. But because of the timing of paying bills and once they're due and everything, from a cash flow perspective, we will be able to pay for it.
So it'll come from the taxpayer. Is that safe to say?
Everything comes from the taxpayer except, well, I shouldn't say that. I'd say 55% of our revenues come from the taxpayer. The rest is through grants and user fees and so on and so forth. However, the contributions to the reserve are from the tax levy. You're correct.
Okay, so this particular item, if it's completed in the next short while, will be paid for out of the levy, we'll say. Is that correct?
Not completely. It will be paid out of this reserve, and the reserve will have more of a negative.
Well, don't use that word. We don't have a reserve. So I'm trying to get to the source of the money. That's all I'm asking. Debt? Is that another word?
No, we wouldn't be using debt for this because we have a 10-year plan to bring it back into the black.
Well, all right.
So
never mind. I'll stop asking the questions. Thank you.
Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The recommendation indicates a $322,000 expenditure, but if you look at that chart on page 176, that's an extra, $38,835 is for temporary cooling if required. And then just above that chart, the last sentence, or second to the last sentence, it is anticipated that temporary building cooling will not be necessary as the expected completion date is prior to the 2018 cooling season. So how can being we're early in the season, January, how can we push to ensure that we can save an extra $38,835 off the recommended tender price to Lee?
Through the chairman to council, unfortunately, I think I've sat in front of council many times. I'm unable to predict the weather. And as a result of that, we really can't ensure that. If we have a very warm spring when we're doing the work, and we need to provide cooling, we need to provide cooling. We do house a lot of important electronics equipment in this facility, and we do have to ensure that it doesn't overheat, et cetera. We will do our very best. We don't want the benefit of awarding this early is that we're very close to the first of the line to when they're able to do the work to being able to do that. That's one of the reasons we got it out on the street, was to try to get this done before it gets warm. But if we get a really, really hot 2 weeks in the spring and we need it, we're going to have to do that. Obviously, we're desirous of saving as much money as we possibly can, which is why we put it out so early, but we can't guarantee it.
We can buy a lot of fans probably for $38,000.
Okay, Councillor Oliver, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, it's unfortunate that Ms. Robinson forgot the fact that one of the reasons we hired her was her ability to predict the weather. Anyways, I do have a legitimate question or comment, and it sort of relates to the last two speakers. Lee, this equipment obviously is going to be brand new equipment as compared to replacing equipment that I think I saw in the report goes back to the 70s when the building was renovated possibly. It will be much more efficient, obviously. Our operating costs will be reduced. Do you know, are you aware if through Michael Simoes we've applied for any grants relating to the retrofit of this HVAC equipment, as we have with lots of other facilities?
Through the chairman to council, I'm not aware that we were able to find any that applied to this. We did look, but I'm not aware that we were actually able to find one that we would be successful in applying for.
Sure, back me up here, I hope, that our operating costs with this equipment for the same building, the same environment, will definitely be lower. I realize everybody knows that, but it will be a significant amount, I suspect.
We're hopeful that it will be a significant, we are expecting some savings. We're hopeful that it'll be significant.
Okay. Councillor Height, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Public Works. Is there a maintenance contract put in place afterwards when this piece of equipment goes in?
Through the chairman to council, there is not a maintenance contract put in place. We have in-house staff that do that, and they have the maintenance schedule that they follow to ensure the longevity, which is why we were able to get the last system to last since '76.
Will we have to send them for training on this new piece of equipment?
Through the chairman, we will not.
Thank you. Councillor Columbus, again.
Yeah, just thought, does this affect the library building next door in any way?
Through the chairman, it does not. It's part of our building.
Thank you.
Okay, I see no further speakers. The recommendation is before you on page 175. It has been moved by Councillor Black, seconded by Councillor Oliver. All those in favor? That is carried. Going on to page 179, our last staff report, dealing with the J. Lynn Crescent Review. Ms. Robinson, please.
Through the chairman to council, before you is the requested report with respect to J. Lynn Crescent. Staff had been asked to provide a history on some of the events that had occurred out there and where we currently stand. We have done so, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Black.
Looking at all this information and some of the taxpayers' concerns from down in Port Dover brought to my attention is that this should not be, that there shouldn't be any taxpayer money involved in repairs or maintenance of this road. And my question would be through you to staff. First of all, is that a correct statement? And secondly, are the taxpayers paying for any of the maintenance or capital upgrades to J. Lynn?
Through the chairman to council, with respect to the road, the taxpayers are not paying for any of the infrastructure. It is all covered through the costs, the maintenance agreement that we have. In accordance with the OMB ruling, those property owners are responsible for that, and they are the ones that are funding it. We do have infrastructure located in the right-of-way in terms of water, and that is on the rate payers, as that is not covered by the OMB ruling.
Okay. And are the appropriate individuals responsible for this actually paying?
Through the chairman to council, I'm not sure that I can comment on if their accounts are up to date in a public setting. I can tell you that the invoices are being generated and we have the appropriate collection mechanism should they not do so.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Comment? Done? Okay. Councillor Height, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was a bit shocked when I read this report. Council had a motion come forward on October 2nd, and we passed Resolution 15, but on September 29th, on the Friday, staff had already signed a deal for this agreement. So with the timing on this, I'm really struggling considering there was an OMB appeal saying that they had to maintain their own road. And when I look at the top of page 181, it says county will undertake this at its cost. And this is the tar and chip of the road that we're doing for a private group.
Through the chairman to council, perhaps it's just the way the wording is being interpreted, and I apologize if there's any kind of misconstruing. Rather, we collect a certain dollar value from the property owners in accordance with the agreement. We've been working on the agreement for a very long period of time. There was a historical agreement. We've recently updated that agreement. That's been going on for quite a while. And as part of those fees that we are recovering from them, it includes the tar and chipping. And rather than hiring an independent contractor to come in to do that at a higher cost, we are undertaking it, at which point we will be reimbursed through the fees that we are collecting. So we are doing it through our stuff, but we are being reimbursed through the property owners through the fees that we're collecting from them.
I can see that, but I guess